Pardon?
Did Tyson phone you straight afterwards? Did he speak to you
Yeah,
straight
he
after?
always does. He always does. And he just said, look, Dad, I did what I had to do. He said, I could have been better. I said, I know that, son. But I said, listen, I know you can always win and pull the win out on a bad night. Tyson there for me was 60% of what he should be, but he knew a lot of pressure on him. He's got to get the knockout to get a draw. He wasn't going to rely on the judges. And it sort of made him hurry a lot. And he was rushing things a bit, smothering his work. But I could go on about it all day. We know it wasn't perfect, but what was perfect was his desire to win and the thrill of the fight.
What did you make of Wilder, John? Because I think Wilder would have beaten most other heavyweights, Joshua and Usyk included, on that performance.
I've got to agree, yes. I do agree, because he showed determination. He was a lot stronger than he was before. But like I say, he trained really, really hard for that. And I just want to commend his trainer, Malik Scott. He's done a brilliant job. Because even me, I don't like Wilder, but when it's credit's deserved, I'll give it. Malik Scott done a brilliant job with him. He motivated him, and he put him in the fight. Even though Tyson's only 60% of what he should be, he still improved Deontay Wilder. So a big shout out to Malik Scott.
What's good, family? So mash the like button, subscribe, and let off the bell. So we just heard there from your man's John Fury. Obviously, we know John Fury is the pops of Tyson Fury, and obviously he's all the way gassed. But I give John some credit here, because many Fury fans even have been riding this performance. But what I like about John in this aspect is the fact that he's riding it in the right way. He's riding it in the same way that YB's ridden it, in as much as, yes, Fury was 10 out of 10 heart, 10 out of 10 mentality, as was Wilder. However, now on reflection, really, that was actually a pretty poor performance from Fury, if that makes sense. Yes, he beat the man in front of him, but I mean, technically speaking, John Fury said there his son was only 60 or 70%. And I actually, having watched it back a few times, I actually agree. This fight, worryingly enough for Wilder, could have been a lot worse for him. Could have been a lot worse for Wilder. Because Fury, and this is the thing, I'm starting to question now. Again, I 100% rate Scott. Not Scott, sorry. I 100% rate Sugar Hill. Because his ability to kind of transform Tyson Fury from the Peter Fury and Ben Davison version into this version. Don't forget, people, Fury really was known as the guy with no power and run around, and that was his thing. So to be able to take someone who's the absolute opposite of aggressive and flip that, and bear in mind, people, they did that within 6 weeks as well. So to be able to do that, obviously it shows the character of Fury and the attributes of Fury, psychologically, his belief in himself. But also, there's a reason Fury rates Sugar Hill so much. Because obviously he feels that energy. It's a bit like Mike Tyson's connection with Customato. They feel that connection. Now, what I was going to say was, yes, I rate Sugar Hill, but have they almost overcooked it at this point? Because thinking about it now, when you look back at the second Wilder fight, so the first Sugar Hill fight, what you'll notice is, guess what? That was almost like the best of both worlds, in as much as Fury was transitioning. Having only spent 6 or 7 weeks with Sugar Hill, he was transitioning from that Ben Davison style, which was highly technical, loads of feints, working off the jab, and the Kronk style, that aggressive Kronk style. So in a way, again, it was almost like the best of both worlds. Because Fury was in between styles, he took the best of the Ben Davison stuff, the feints and the jab, and he combined it with the aggressive right hand on the end. This fight, the jabs, Fury said himself that, and to be fair, I'm not blaming Sugar Hill, I'm saying that maybe it's just to do with Fury. Maybe Fury, you know what it's like, you know what the cliche is, when you get punched in the mouth. Fury got put down, don't forget, people, Fury got put down early in the fight as well. And we know actually Fury is pretty predictable in as much as, guess what? When he got put down in the first fight, what did he do? He came out fighting. So it's probably highly likely especially when you think about it. Because in the first round, Fury was actually pretty technical. He didn't come out and do much in the first round, and really the second round. Yes, he put Wilder down in the third round, but then once he got put down in the fourth round, it was almost like, I've been hit and I'm just gonna have a tear up now. Which to be fair is a quality Fury said himself. I'm going in there for a tear up, and Fury's historically always been known. And actually, this kind of style, he actually, if you look at Fury's early career, he actually started off like this. He started off as a tear up guy. No joke. That's how he started his career. And I believe it was after the John McDermott fight, really, where he learned that, you know what, I've got to at least build in some attribute skills as well, i.e. the tall, long style. If I want to beat some of these different fighters like Derek Chisora and John McDermott and them shorter dudes, Fury realised he's going to make life hard for himself going toe-to-toe with people with certain attributes. Now, people like Wilder, who are long basketball players, Fury has got the edge on the inside because he's got that grit about him. And now combined with the cronk parts, as we saw, Wilder didn't have no answers. Wilder really didn't do no counter moves the whole fight. But you can't blame him. He was gassed. Well, you can blame him because he got no gas tank. But either way, he didn't do no counter moves. Fury really had his way with Wilder. Yeah, Fury was riding Wilder the whole fight through. To be quite frank with you, apart from the first round. The first round was Wilder's best round, really. Yeah, the fourth round he knocked him down, but it wasn't really his best round. That was just lucky, truth be known, in my opinion. There's nothing Wilder did in the fourth round that was any different from any other round, if that makes sense. What Fury really did have his way with Wilder. And he could have had his way with him even more. And that's what John Fury is saying here. John Fury said, listen, at best, Fury was 60%. The technical side was off. And I do believe that. And what I was saying was earlier, I wonder if, yes, Fury likely got hit and just got into a tear-up, but Fury being one of the higher IQ fighters or probably the highest IQ, if that makes sense, in the current heavyweight boxing scene, it could be perceived as a bit of a shame. Yes, as a boxing fan, we got to see a tear-up, but it could be perceived as a bit of a shame that we didn't get to see more of a clinical aggressive performance. Again, thinking about the second fight. Because really, I was saying, get that. I was begging to see, because Wilder, after about, 4 or 5 rounds, he was like a zombie. His hands were by his chest, yeah, and he was just like, literally, whenever Fury kept loading up with the right hand here, and he'd end up missing it, and all Wilder was doing was leaning back. Seriously, his guard wasn't up. Every time Wilder would just lean back slovenly. That was Wilder's defence. He wasn't slipping. He wasn't hands up. He would just lean back like a zombie with his mouth open. Even Sugar Hill was begging Fury, get the jab going. In my opinion, Fury should have just jabbed his nut off. We know jabs. The reason jabs are important is it's much more accurate. It's a much more accurate punch, and Wilder was a standing target. Fury should have literally, I'm talking about triple, quadruple, 6 jabs in a row. Just jab, 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 jab. Because when you're in that range as well, right on top of Wilder needs about a runway, yeah? Wilder needs to ring up Gatwick and book in there to get his right hand off, yeah? Trust me 100%. If Wilder can't get a booking, if Wilder can't book a flight in at Heathrow, he can't get his right hand off, no doubt. So if you were just jabbing his nut off, especially when he was so tired and you can see it coming, you should have been jab, 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 touching him all over to the head. And then, when he's completely bust up after 6 jabs, right down the middle. Short and sharp. And that's what, from a technical point of view and from a perfectionist point of view, was a bit of a shame. I would love to have seen a more clinical part to it in the last few rounds. It was almost as if, I know that people can argue, well, Wilder was always dangerous, but listen, Wilder was dangerous when you're loading up. I'd have thought so. Much more than if you'd have stuck behind the feints as well. The feints were gone, really. All I saw, Fury in the end ended up looking like Wilder. He was just stepping in with a big 1-2 as well. And there was very low yield on that. You're putting out massive energy for the big 1-2 from Fury, but the yield was low. It really took Fury 4 or 5 rounds to get Fury out of it. Sorry, to get Wilder out of there. He could have been out there a lot earlier if he was actually landing with them shots. Because a lot of the time, Fury himself would fall in with the right hand and then end up in the clinch. And in the clinch, that's another area. In the clinch, there wasn't much. I expected more from Fury, to be honest. I used the analogy of, think about Josh Taylor versus Prograis. I was expecting a lot more of that. Knowing how Wilder can't fight on the inside, I was expecting Fury, to be on the inside, not so much clinching. Because Fury, a lot of the time, he was the one initiating the clinch. I was screaming, saying, why? Get your elbows in, get your chin down, just sit there. Sit there on him and whip away to the body. That was another element that was massively underused by Fury. The body punching. Especially in them latter rounds when Wilder was zombified. It should have been either jab into the head, or mixing it up, innit? Jab, head, body, touching to the body. It should have been, I think even Lennox Lewis and Andre Ward said, don't go, you kept missing Wilder's head, just really invest in the body. Because at that point, often early in a fight, yeah, when you try and jab to the body, fighters will just skip back. They'll like almost explosively step back, and it's hard to get. But the way Wilder was, he was begging to have a body, to have a proper... And I guess the thing is, I think what's happened here is Fury had been put down, got into that fight mode, got into that fight or flight mode, adrenaline pumping, and ultimately you ain't thinking logical. Not to mention the fact you've been put down and your head's half scrambled anyway. You're into that animalistic primitive thing. But all I'm saying is from a perfectionist point of view, in an ideal world, I would love to have seen a more technical. But again, nothing's ever perfect. And maybe, I'm sure Fury and his team will strive to get that in fights going forward. Maybe the Dillian Whyte fight, for example. I want to see that same level of commitment. And that's what John Fury said. 10 out of 10 commitment and heart, but the technical part. And this is why you're never going to... We all strive for perfection. And maybe it's going to be one of the next ones, if that makes sense. Fury's got a real clear goal now, in my opinion, for his next performances with AJ or Usyk or Dillian Whyte. I want to see him put the technical element and use that IQ behind the oomph. Because what is interesting, I've got a video coming soon. Eddie Hearn was almost criticising Fury, saying, oh, he wasn't very technical. As if to say, oh, but Usyk and AJ was more technical. Listen, Usyk and AJ's was boring. Yeah, how about that? Usyk's and AJ's was boring. And that's what's important. People, you got to get the mix right. Yeah? Being technical is all well and good if you got the oomph behind it. If AJ was fighting how he was fighting, yeah, and he was in there and you could see him putting effort into the jab, committing with it. There's nothing wrong with playing a jab game. I mean, Lennox Lewis would do that all day. But guess what? He jabbing. He not fannying amateuring around. There's nothing wrong with jabbing and trying to be technical, but you got to put some commitment. You got to put some kind of commitment behind it. Otherwise, it's just a glorified amateur sparring session, which is what happened in the Usyk versus AJ fight. That's what it was. It looked like a sparring session, an amateur sparring session. Fury and Wilder looked like a heavyweight title fight. Do you understand? Bear in mind, people, this is the heavyweight championship of the world. That used to mean something. It used to, you know what I mean? That used to be something in its own right. People would go into them events, fighters would go into them events with a sense of, wow. Now it's kind of, yeah, there's no pride, is there, really? Whereas Fury and Wilder, I think, obviously Wilder wanted his title back. Fury, doing what he does. There was that, you know what I mean? That sense of, Fury's always said, if I get put down, I'm getting back up. And you can't call him a liar. And that's what you can't do. You can't call him a liar. He gets put down, gets back up. And in a way, I think he fights better after it. I think he gets comfortable. I think he's found comfort there, which is actually a very rare attribute. Very few fighters, and I do rate Fury for that. He's got a Hall of Fame characteristic, his ability to be put down and it's almost like a relief for him. I've been put down now, great, now I can get crack on kind of thing. Most fighters, AJ, his back end's twitching. I'm going to get put down. Rather than embracing it, rather than finding calm in the chaos. So yeah, John Fury is absolutely correct here. The fight was amazing, but the technical part was certainly lacking. And one thing I want to say about people have been talking about, oh, this was the greatest fight ever. I think it's definitely the greatest fight in the last 20 years. But on hindsight, really thinking about it, I do believe Wilder was poor when you think about it. What did Wilder really do all night? And we know this is the thing, people. We do have to appreciate he was always only a one-trick pony, so we can't really expect much more than that. But even for a one-trick pony, that one trick, it was poor, wasn't it? Really, I don't think the weight helped. That's obvious. I think from now on, Wilder, if he fights again, needs to be coming in 215. To be honest with you, I think for his sake, he's proven his cardio is as bad as AJ's. So there's no point adding weight. Number one. Also, there's no point. Yeah. Bottom line, there's no point adding weight. You need to go as low as is healthy for you, and because guess what? If you run out of gas, Wilder was literally out of the game, because if he hasn't got no gas, he can't twitch enough. Wilder's right hand is based on twitch. I don't believe in this myth that Wilder's got a wicked right hand that he can swing from everywhere. I don't believe that. Wilder's right hand is only really dangerous when he's got cardio and he can snap it. If he's not snapping it, someone like Fury or these top level guys, they're going to see it coming, I believe. Wilder's never going to catch Fury, Usyk, never going to catch them, man. I don't believe with that tired right hand. I don't believe it. And if you look at the first fight, Wilder wasn't, and I think this is the thing, you see, the first fight, it's quite a lot of variables going on, so we can't be sure, but the first fight, Wilder weighed in 209 pounds. Is the reason he was able to have power until the 12th round because he was 209? Or was it because, guess what? In the first fight, Fury wasn't sticking it on Wilder. And this is something I've been telling you, man, for a long time. I've been telling you that it's not rocket science, but I'm saying that it's a lot easier, fights a lot easier, cardiovascular-wise, when you're the one coming forward. You're the one dominating the centre of the ring. You're the one applying the pressure. All night, Wilder was the one who was dangerous in that fight. And in fact, in a way, I think I've already proven my statement. Initially, I thought maybe the fact Wilder's 209 is the fact he had so much cardio in the first fight. But what do we know? In that round, when Fury got put down, and Fury came bouncing back, did you notice how quickly the tables turned? All of a sudden, Wilder put Fury down, and then Fury came back and stuck it on him. All of a sudden, Wilder started looking dishevelled, didn't he? And unfortunately, that was the last round, or was it round 11 or round? I'm not sure, whatever round it was. That was the last round, and we didn't get to see how it played out. But all of a sudden, Wilder went from nice and calm and nearly knocking Fury out to backed up and looking all out of shape. So that kind of in itself proved that, or implies that, guess what? When someone puts it on Wilder, he run out of gas. Now, there's been a few cats saying, yeah, but your Ortiz fight, listen, Ortiz is no good. Not to mention the stress it puts on one's body from the attributes of Fury. Yeah, people don't realise, if you haven't boxed before, do you know how naturally hard it is to box someone bigger than you? And I know it sounds cliche, but seriously, when you go in there, and someone has got the height advantage on you in particular, everything you do is a lot harder. Being a smaller man, you have to explode a lot quicker to even catch the taller man. When you're taller than someone, 2, 3, 4 inches, you can see everything that your opponent's doing. And because of your length, you've got that split second extra, which means the smaller person has to put more effort into being quicker to make up for that length difference. So as a smaller person, you're always... That's why if you watch the first round with Wilder, did you see how Wilder was having to really stress to score them points? Meanwhile, Fury was taking the ding out of a lot of them by being able to see it coming because he's got the bird's eye view, and then take a half step back, which was taking a lot of the sting out of it. So Wilder had to commit and use all of his explosiveness to even land them shots, and Fury was just kind of coasting. That's what I'm coining attribute stress, and not to mention the weight as well. But I don't really think the weight. Yeah, there wasn't so much clinch work, there wasn't so much. Fury wasn't devastating in the clinch work. I don't believe. I think a lot of his work was smothered actually, and I was quite surprised. I was expecting a much more, again, Josh Taylor versus Prograis approach from Fury, sitting in that close to mid-range area and digging away. Whereas really, it was all one arm, having one arm. That you might know my opinion. When boxers throw punches and they've only got one arm free, it's a complete waste. If I ever train a fighter, I'll tell them, if you've only got one arm free, don't bother. Just wait for the referee, because you ain't scoring. I've never seen someone knock someone out. Okay, well, I'm not sure. I've never seen someone knock someone out with one free hand. What I'm saying is, it's very hard to score points with them kind of shots, and they take a lot. But they take a lot out of you. When you've got a man pulling you into him, pulling you together, and you're trying to slap him, it's not worth it. Just sit there and wait. And in fact, Floyd, or someone who said this, I think it was Mosley or Andre Berto, said that every time they got in the clinch, Floyd would start taking deep breaths. That's what I'll be telling my fighters to do. If you get in the clinch, and you got a hand free, don't bother about doing pity-patty, crappy shots. Worry about breathing heavy. Get that breath in. Use that time as a break, because, you know what I mean? Let the other guy think he's going to... Let the other guy waste his energy slapping. I mean, look at McGregor versus Mayweather. That was another one. Every time they got in the clinch. Because McGregor was told, oh, because you do MMA, you're going to be wicked in the clinch. So McTapper had that whole ideology going into the fight, and McTapper wasted half of his already pitiful gas tank doing pity-patty rabbit shots. Didn't do anything, did they? In my mind, if I'm going to throw a shot, it's going to be a dig, Alvarez style. Otherwise, don't bother. Because what are we trying to do here? Score points, do damage, or waste energy? All waste energy. I've never seen someone cause damage with that one-arm free rubbish. All I see it do is burn gas. And Wilder, Mallet Scott was telling him, oh, when you got an arm free, work it. Oh, work it. No wonder his gas tank ran out. He's wasted it all doing that pity-patty clinch rubbish. Especially when you know Fury's the bigger man, so he's going to have the advantage in the clinch. Why waste energy there? Conserve it. Increase your gas tank in them situations. Alright, I know Fury's got one arm free. Let me just tuck up here and let Fury bang away, slap away. Because it ain't doing no damage. And I can even talk from experience. I'm telling you now, whenever I've been in the clinch and one arm's free, don't do nothing. I've never once felt, and I'm not saying I've got loads of experience, but whenever I have done it, I've never once felt any of them shots and thought, wow, that hurt. Or wow, that's effective. So, anyway, we heard that from John Fury. Good thing about John is, John will go back and he will report the things. And it's not rocket science. I'm sure Sugar Smith and even Fury himself, Tyson Fury himself, will look back and know this. And that, hopefully, it will set up well for Dillian Whyte. Why? Because the Dillian Whyte fight, I believe, Fury's going to have even more attributes. But that heart element, in my opinion, will also be in play the same way. Because Dillian Whyte will come to fight. So I'm just hoping Fury can apply that same aggression with a bit more skill and dissect Dillian. And that'll be a truly great performance, if that makes sense. The combination of both. Yeah, we've got the heart down pat. Now we need to see technique brought in to make it to give it the ultimate. And that's why, in a way, that's why I've struggled over the years to rate Lennox Lewis to a massive degree, because he never, not never, in some fights he did. If he had, this is the difference, you see. This is why I don't rate Floyd to the nth degree. This is why I struggle to rate Lewis to the nth degree, because yes, if Lewis was pushed there, he'd go there. But why can't fighters come into the ring, and have that? Why do you need to be, for example, when Lennox was in there with Vitali and he found himself in a fight, he fought back, which is great. It's better than AJ. But there's a level above that. Why can't, regardless of whether you've been pushed there or not, and this reminds me a bit like Fury in to an extent used to be this way. Fury in the first Wilder fight, for example, was like that. Yeah, if I can get through this fight, not having to do much, I will. And that's why I never like that style from Fury. I don't understand it. Well, I do understand it. It's not. Yeah, I don't like it. Bottom line, I don't like, especially in heavyweight boxing. I think it's not. I believe in sport, people should give their all. You should go in there and commit your all. Now, in the second fight and the third fight, in particular the third fight, Fury gave it his all. That's what's inspiring to watch. I don't care what no one says. People gassed up the first Fury fight versus Wilder. That wasn't an inspiring performance. This one was inspiring because you're in there and you're giving it your all. And that's what I'm saying when I talk about Floyd and Lewis. Just they don't turn me on. Sorry, Mayweather in particular, he don't turn me on at all because, yeah, he's got a technical element, but he never went in there and he'd always come out to fight saying, yeah, I never had to get out of first gear. He'd celebrate that as if it's something to be happy about. That's not good. If you're that great, we want to see you in sixth gear. We want to see you, you know what I mean? You're using all your skills and going for the KO. And that's why I have to give respect to Fury and Kronk, because Kronk and Sugar Hill said that, listen, my uncle and our way is we plan for the KO. We don't plan just to win. We don't plan Ben Davidson, Rob McCracken style just to win. We plan we build the KO. The KO is the number one goal, not just to win. And we saw that play out. That's a more perfect version of greatness. But I think Lennox and Mayweather are equally great, or are great in their own rights. But the pinnacle of greatness is that applying technique and skill with absolute commitment and ferociousness. Yeah, that is the ultimate 10 out of 10 greatness. And I believe Fury has the ability, when he puts the technique element on top of that oomph, against people like Dillian, against people like Usyk, against people like AJ potentially. And I'll tell you right now, what would be amazing if AJ actually sorts himself out, which the odds aren't at the moment. Bear in mind, he's made no changes to his team. The odds are he ain't gonna change nothing. But what I'll tell you what now, what would be amazing if Fury spends, time building his technique, and imagine if both of them clash together 2 years from now. And they're both, you know what I'm saying? They've both got the technique and they've both got the oomph. That would be amazing. That would be something to behold. At the moment, as it stands, Fury wipes the floor with AJ, no doubt. With that soppy, soft AJ, Fury wiped the floor with him. Too much oomph, bottom line. Yeah? You got whooped by a cruiserweight who wasn't even showing you no oomph. The cruiserweight came out and said, I wasn't even trying. And he weren't lying either. You can't watch that Usyk performance and say that, he was really going for it. The only time Usyk was really half going for it was when AJ would hit him and he'd come straight back. But he wasn't on a mission. Usyk wasn't a man on a mission in that fight. He was just outboxing you. But even outboxing you, he still displayed more oomph than AJ did. That's why he had AJ on the ropes. And guess what? AJ never had Usyk on the ropes. Oops. Yeah? So that AJ and this Fury gets stopped. AJ gets stopped within 8 rounds, 100%. So the onus is on AJ to show something different.